From Studio 34E, you are watching the Scooting Scholar Report. I am your humble host, Richard Lawrence. Well, it's the month of August, and when I think of August, I think of long, hot days. And of course, it's where we wind down the summer months, at least unofficially, as we roll into the new school year and stop taking our vacations and all. But August is also a month of milestones. We have some big milestones in August. Last week we talked about the 50th anniversary of the Watts riots. August is also the 10th anniversary. It's been 10 years since Hurricane Katrina came down on New Orleans. And finally, it's the first anniversary of the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. There's another major milestone in August that didn't get as much attention as I hoped it would. And that is, it's the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was on August the 6th that President Lyndon Johnson signed the measure that forbade practices such as poll taxes and literacy tests from suppressing voter turnout. Now, of course, this mainly affected blacks in southern states. And while blacks did have the right to vote, again, with laws such as poll taxes and literacy tests, it did make it very difficult for one to cast a vote. Now, there's a new breed of voter suppression tactics that have come on the scene recently. We've seen states such as Texas and Pennsylvania and North Carolina, to name a few, who have enacted laws such as voter ID laws, which require a person to show a government-issued ID before casting a ballot. Now, if we look at the research, it shows that voter fraud is extremely low, but that hasn't stopped lawmakers from supporting or bringing forward the idea that we need these laws in order to protect from voter fraud. Another tactic has been to suppress voter turnout by reducing the amount of hours that polls are open, or to take away early voting, or to reduce the number of polling places that are open. In each of these situations, it oftentimes leads to much longer lines. And we know that when there's a longer line, people are less likely to stand for hours just for the ability or for the opportunity to vote. Yet another way to suppress voter turnout is through poor criminal justice record keeping. We saw this rear its head in the 2000 election, where in Florida, for instance, a state which has permanent disenfranchisement for convicted felons, there were many people who were on the list who had been unregistered, who should have remained registered to vote, but only because their names matched. And of course, we really should be trying to get permanent disenfranchisement laws repealed and not expanded. So we can see that there are many loopholes that lawmakers have been trying to skirt through in order to keep voter turnout low. And sadly to say, it seems as though it's Republicans, much more so than Democrats, who have been trying to get these laws passed. And perhaps one of the reasons why many lawmakers would like to see these laws passed is that lower turnout does favor incumbents. Another reason is that low turnout also seems to favor more conservative ideology. That's oftentimes because those voters who do turn up and are willing to wait are the more committed voters. And more committed voters tend to be whiter. They also tend to be older, and they also tend to be more conservative in general. So that is where that's why more conservative ideologies tend to be favored. So what can we do about it? Well, Some have suggested, such as Bernie Sanders, one of the folks running for the Democratic nomination. Sanders has suggested that we look at making our national holiday, that we make the election day a national holiday. Myself, I happen to prefer to see, I would like to see an expansion of absentee voting. Now, in places like Oregon and Washington, almost all ballots, if not all ballots, are cast as absentee ballots. In California, a great number of voters do cast as absentee ballots, myself included. But many states do make absentee voting very, very difficult. But I personally would like to see an expansion of that. And even if we don't go that route, we definitely should be exploring options to make voting easier, to expand voting and not to suppress it. 2008 was most likely an anomaly. If you can remember the scenes of people standing in line for hours waiting to cast their ballots around the country, I don't think we will see that same level of excitement in 2016. So once again, we need to call on lawmakers to think of ways to make voting easier, to expand voting, and to not make it more difficult to do. So remember, voting is our right. Let's not let it slip away. Well, I have to scoot. I gotta scoot. That does it for another edition of the Scooting Scholar Report. Now, don't forget, we can continue this conversation, so please follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, or you can go to thescootingscholar.net. Whatever you do, I do appreciate you joining me, and I hope we get to see each other again real soon.